How do you think we're progressing with motivating senior leaders in banks to consider AI and data as a core part of an approach to offering better experiences to customers, managing risk, making more profit, etc.?
So I feel there has been quite a movement. I think in my early years in AI, when we were mostly dealing with, chief risk officer, chief compliance officer, it was certain elements in the bank who wanted this in. But by now, when you look at the larger investment banks globally, you feel that they have spent billions in architecture every year to even create the foundations to build use cases. So when you look at where they are using artificial intelligence now in terms of optimizing some of their trading activities, scanning terms and conditions in the market, getting market insights for them and their customers. So it has really moved on to be one of the key distinguishers for them from the rest of the market in terms of how fast can they operate using AI, how much market insights they can have, and so on. So now it's more for the second tier banks and the smaller institutions to say, okay, we clearly see it's working for the big guys. They're really scaling up. They're building partially new businesses and even challenger institutions using artificial intelligence for scaling. How can we benefit? And for them, it's a different starting point in terms of data. They haven't maybe made all the IT investments and data investments they had to make. So they're even more under pressure to find the right relevant use cases on this. So I would say even here back in Germany, it's on all the executives' agenda. There's hardly anyone that I interviewed, also from some of the senior executives, where they didn't want to talk about it or it wasn't important for them. But now, 2 years later, post-COVID, in some ways, we've come to the realization that back then it was interesting for them and they knew that they had to catch up. Now, a lot of them have made some of the larger investments, which they hadn't in the past, to become more digital. So to set themselves up to really go down that path for real. And I'm also talking about the smaller organizations. I think the banking landscape here is a bit different than UK. We have all these separate local organizations, so you have more than 1,000 smaller banks operating, and then it's quite different than the UK with some 5 to 6 larger organizations, and the rest doesn't really matter. And the challenge here for me is now to get the smaller ones to move, to get them, even if they only have 10 people with programming capabilities, to say, okay, how do we collaborate in the ecosystem? How do they work with vendors? How do they work with startups? How do they get some of the innovation in without needing to hire a lot of the people skills themselves? So it's a bit of a different challenge depending on the size of the organization, really.
As we look ahead from here and you think about where you're going to focus your attention in terms of AI adoption in the coming years, where do you think the use cases will come for financial services firms as you look down the next few years?
I think that goes in line with some of the challenges. And the challenges in Germany, and we could say also UK and European-wide, is that there are neobanks and challengers who haven't maybe in all cases converted themselves to a bank just yet, or are not fully regulated, and yet they can play in the same space, in the same getting the customer's attention, getting their investment money, getting their funds for exchange, and so on. So the existing organizations have these challenges in the market. They know they have to be more dynamic, and they know that they have to find ways of engaging clients in different ways. So what they will do, and what we're already seeing here, is that not only are chatbots that have been around for some 10 years are becoming a much more sophisticated. So the banks here are looking towards Asia, looking towards the Middle East, to some of the examples where Customers are treated individually with some kind of personalization. They have their own avatars, they have their own service offering that can be gained online. They have other platforms like WeChat and others where you can order a number of range of financial products where you're being recommended, and you see this kind of ecosystems involving around some of these challenger offerings. And if the larger institutions don't move at the time and look at partnering ecosystems and so on, then it will be the smaller ones where they might not be profitable themselves, but they will be profitable if they manage to be a platform for other things. When you think about it, the financial crisis made it clear that yes, the bank owns the customer relationship and the data that goes with that and some of the money, but this customer relationship and the customer kind of satisfaction, all of this are important to keep in mind when you think about what else could I offer this person, or would this person have rather a digital channel to research and investigate. And so when I think back to the survey, one of the things that surprised me the most was that even dealing with some of the oldest private wealth and private banking clients in Switzerland, even for them, it was clear that they had to offer digital services to their clients. Yes, the client still wants to see a banker with a lot of experience and sit opposite them, but I want to have the chance for themselves to investigate potential investment opportunities up front. So the bank needs to have another way to keep them engaged during the year, to put interesting proposals in front of them and offer things that are meaningful. And I think this is a challenge for banking overall to stay relevant, to make the most of the customer relationship, to make the most of the data, to make it transparent to the customer that this data has a value, but also for the customer then to receive something in return. And so I see for the next couple of years, I see quite a bit of consolidation in certain areas, be it private wealth, but also private banking, but also for the trading, obviously, in other areas which can be highly automated. And also for retail banking, as long as the customer has the ability to switch quickly and the ability to say, okay, I'd rather be on this platform because I get this and this insights. The banks don't have a lot of difference in interest rate to play with right now. So they are playing by a different functionality and different service offering, sometimes with a different coolness factor, right? And so that is playing out in different ways right now. And AI can be one of the main distinguishers between the different organizations in terms of how can they enable the customer to do things faster, to do more, to guess where they want to go at. So I see that as a base for a battle for the customer and for the value that can be generated on the customer side.
How do you think AI can be applied to sustainability?
Yeah, this has been sustainability has been a kind of passion of mine, probably as long as I can remember, from the early age with my parents instilling it in me, and then kind of looking at, as I worked in a global career, wherever I was based in the world, to see what is the status there and what can we help. I didn't expect that there would be so much overlap between some of the work that I've been doing in AI in the last 8 years and sustainability. But earlier this year, when around the TED Talk, I did some research and also reached out to some of our client base. And I feel for the first time, at least for myself, I realized that we now have enough data to kind of end this discussion whether AI replaces jobs. So this kind of in the social element of this, there's enough data to kind of validate the fact that this is more a shift of jobs and creating new roles with a positive global impact. And when it comes to the pure sustainability element, I feel that some of the alternative energy, for example, in order for this to be competitive, in order for this to really operate at the best way it can, I feel that in many cases today we are lacking some additional insights. And I think together with satellite data, alternative data overall, IoT and others, AI can really give the additional insight that is needed, for example, for wind power in terms of the detailed locations, but also the directions in terms of solar power, in terms of optimizing the grid, optimizing the supply. In order for this world really to go on a transition towards alternative energies, it needs to not fly in the dark and just make dogmatic decisions in terms of how that should be shifted, but rather use the insights from data that could be already there to optimize the chances for this transition to happen. So I feel without artificial intelligence, we somewhat fly in the dark when we want to say, oh, we want to replace this or renew this. We need to use this across a number of fields, be it in optimizing transport, water, energy, farming, and many other fields to really make a difference there. So some of the discussions I had with clients also in the fintech field were then in terms of ESG ratings and so on, where artificial intelligence could help creating reports and contribute to ratings where based on publicly available data, but also based on news, on social, we can have a clearer picture of the impact of a certain company, or we can have a clearer picture using satellite images on the output and the pollution also. So it probably takes some solution like artificial intelligence to come to a kind of really the necessary details and so on to make investing a smarter choice, to have kind of more facts available as you invest on a personal basis, but also from a company perspective.
Michael, thanks so much. And perhaps we'll have you back in a few months' time to talk about how we make this transition from fossil fuels to alternative energies. And we can talk about those data sets that you recommend we look at that will really help us to point in the right direction. So thanks so much for being here today. I know you have a very busy schedule.
Thank you, Sandeep. It was a pleasure to be on here. Looking forward to our next debate. Thank you for having me.
And thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today on CXO Disruptors, and we will see you next time.